A podcast wins a Golden Globe Award. No, not this podcast, but thanks for your votes. You nominated me. But this is a first. And in some ways, it could be an attack on legacy media. The killing in Minneapolis, Minnesota continues to stir protest around the country. No signs of that issue diminishing in its salience. We'll be looking at that in more detail. Threats of the independence of the Fed, what's happening to Jerome Powell and the attacks from the Trump administration. Could it, in fact, wreck not only the U.S., but the worldwide economy? We'll be looking at that in more detail. And then more is continuing to come out of this 4-hour plus interview Donald Trump did with the New York Times last week. There's still more news coming out. We'll be sharing with you some of the insights and an in-depth look at what many feel is a true profile in courage, Representative Thomas Massie, the Republican, who is in the sights of the Trump administration. All that and more today on Filtered. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker.
Hi, and welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today. We have an action-packed show for you. First off, the Golden Globe Awards last night. I didn't watch it. I wish I could say I did. I went to bed at 8:30 because I am a huge, huge believer in getting a great night's sleep. And I had the best night's sleep I've had maybe in years last night. According to my 8 Sleep, which is not a sponsor, I had 8 hours and 40 minutes sleep last night. So I am looking at this based on news reports. But the news is in, and good hang with Amy Poehler won the first ever Golden Globe Award for Best Podcast. She defeated Call Her Daddy, Smartless, Up First, Armchair Expert, and the Mel Robbins podcast. I have listened to all of those. They're all very good podcasts. Why is this significant? Now, as recently as a few years ago, if you had suggested to the board of directors of the Golden Globes, let's give an award to podcast, I think they would have looked down at you like, you're the skunk in the party. What are you talking about? We're the real creative community. We're not these amateur hacks out there just bloviating in the microphone. I think that would have been the attitude. Not anymore. Part of it is the massive amounts of money that some of these podcasters are earning. Reportedly, the 3 guys on Smartless got a $100 million deal. Now, we're used to seeing hundreds and hundreds of $1 million deals for people like Joe Rogan, but now it's Hollywood people, because Amy Poehler, maybe she's not Hollywood elite, but she's pretty well respected. She has hosted numerous award shows. She has been in a lot of great comedy movies. She has been the star of Parks and Recreation, other TV shows. So she is maybe not in the same category as George Clooney, but she's pretty well respected in Hollywood. Rightfully so, I would say. So they gave the first award to her. I'm not as concerned or frankly interested in whether her show is the greatest podcast in the whole world and whether it deserved it versus others. I don't think that's the real issue here. I think what's extraordinarily significant is the fact that the Golden Globes, that Hollywood itself is paying so much respect to podcasts, and it's saying, okay, you're real. And you're real even though you don't have the poobahs at Paramount, at Time Warner, at HBO, which is kind of all the same thing, saying, you get the green light. We like you. We're putting our thumb on this. Here's the big bag of money. That's what's different, because for most of what comes out of Hollywood, big television, New York City, the big production studios around the world, it's very much a traditional model. In some ways, not that much different from 80 years ago, where a handful of incumbent elites who had a lot of money decided what gets produced, what gets seen, and what doesn't get seen. Podcasts aren't like that. And that's why a lot of Hollywood producers, studios, are feeling threatened, as they should. They really should. So I think it's quite significant that the Golden Globes decided to include podcast, Now, there's been some criticism saying, well, you can't give an award to the best podcast. That's like giving an award to the best movie. Well, there's different categories of movies. I guess you could say they do best picture, but there's best comedy, best drama, best female. There's all sorts of subdivisions. Right now, in the minds of Hollywood, podcast is just this agglomeration of stuff. They're not quite sure how to categorize it, but this is the first step. So why is this so significant? Because as much as Amy Poehler has credibility in Hollywood, even she can't just say, oh, I've got a great idea for another movie, a stepmom's movie, or one of her other wacky comedies. Just give me $100 million. All the big comedians are having trouble with that. Will Ferrell on down. But there was nothing stopping Amy Poehler from saying, I want to do a podcast. Now, she may have partnered with some bigger company. That's not important here. We are in a world where any single person could be a movie star, TV star like Amy Poehler. It could be me, and in fact, it is me, can just decide, I want to do a podcast, and I want to do a video podcast. And just through a decision of an individual, you can distribute a show on 100 different podcasting platforms and on a dozen or more video podcasting platforms like YouTube, like TikTok, as I'm doing right now live with you. That's what's profoundly different. And I got to tell you, I think today in Hollywood, there are probably a lot of Hollywood stars, if they haven't done it already, are screaming at their agents and managers saying, get me a podcast. And the agents and managers are saying, get your own podcast. You don't need me for that. Just do it. And these have got to be the conversations going on. Let's look at some of the numbers here. The money is getting real in podcasting. U.S. podcasting advertising revenue was estimated to be $1.9 billion in 2023. That's just in the U.S. It's predicted to go over $2.6 billion in 2026. Now, Spotify alone has invested more than $10 billion in podcasting in the past handful of years. So this is no longer sort of a cute little project. This is big money. This is big money. But how big is it? I want to do some research. I couldn't find it in many stores. I did ask ChatGPT. So this is courtesy of ChatGPT, doing an analysis of the basic business metrics on podcasting versus all of television. By that, I include really anything that isn't feature movies. So broadcast TV, cable news, sitcoms, shows on Netflix that aren't movies. So according to ChatGPT, and they're bringing this from a source, Endscreen Media, there were $225.6 billion in revenues in 2024. If you want to include everything sort of related to television, TV ads, subscriptions, all of that. So $225 billion. Podcasting is only $2.4 billion of that. Now, if you want to look at the entire world, according to Owl and Company, there was $7.3 billion spent on podcasting in 2024. Pretty significant. They say the U.S. had about 2/3 of that. But the entire worldwide market for television is huge. It's still dwarfing anything on podcasting. So how do you really look at it? If you want to add it all up, there's essentially $435 billion spent on television, production, advertising, all of that throughout the world. And if podcasting is $7 billion, that's less than 2%. Now, you can look at that two ways. You could say, well, so podcasting's still insignificant. Or you could look at it, as I do, and say, wow, we got a lot of room for growth. So I see this as an extraordinarily positive thing about the future of podcasting, because it's only grabbing 2% of the money available for people involving with creating video and audio content. And I'm pretty sure the audience of podcasts is a lot more than 2% of what people watch. I don't think there's any doubt about that. We've gone over those metrics before. So depending on how you slice it, dice it, how you define money spent on TV, it's between 1% and 2% of all monies that are currently spent on television, traditional TV, whether you define that as cable TV, broadcast TV, shows on Netflix like Black Mirror. When you add all that up, podcasting is only 1 to 2% of that. So a small percentage, but it's growing. At the very same time, traditional studios are seeing their margins go down. Traditional production companies are seeing business dry up. And I think that's inevitable. This is one reason why I see every smart Hollywood star these days doing a podcast. I mean, it's frankly, it reminds me of the late 1990s when there was a time when, 1995, when you started a podcast or started a website. I got tjwalker.com in 1995. You could put out a press release and get a news story. Any big company could, just announcing you had a website. And by the end of the 1990s, it kind of became a story if you didn't have a website. I think we're almost to that point for Hollywood stars or any entertainer. If you're a singer, a comedian, a dramatic star, I think we're almost to the point where you're not going to get any pat on the back or news story for having a podcast. But you're going to be seen as somewhat lazy, not with it, against the times, counter to the zeitgeist if you don't have a podcast. Because the economics are frankly just mind-blowing. I mean, you look at some of the stars on Smartless. Will Arnett, I think, probably had less of a net worth than Jason Bateman and Sean, their other host, who had a long time Will and Grace series money behind him. So you're now seeing a situation where there are movie stars, television stars, who've been around the business in and out for 30 years, and they're making more money from their podcast than all the upfront fees, all the royalties they ever got as movie stars, TV stars. Certainly Trevor Noah, the former anchor of Comedy Central's The Daily Show, is by most accounts making more money having his own little podcast than anchoring a show and having to be anchored to New York City in a time frame of a big network, which he did for many years. So the stars are doing it. The real question I have for you is, why aren't you doing it? Now, you might not want to be a podcast host. Not everybody has to have a podcast. But if you do have ideas inside you that you want to share with the world, if you have expertise you want to share with the world, then my question to you really is, what's holding you back? Here's the real test I have for you. Imagine your favorite TV news network. Maybe it's Fox News Channel, maybe it's MSNBC, maybe it's BBC, maybe it's CNN, maybe it's Al Jazeera. I don't know what it is. Imagine your favorite news channel in the whole world calls you up today and says, we would like to interview you about X. And X is the one thing you know more about than anyone else. Could be your business, could be a hobby. Imagine they say, hey, we're going to send a limo to get you. We're going to put you in the green room. You're going to have nice snacks. You're going to be around interesting, famous people. And you're going to be on a 5-minute segment today where we're going to interview you about this subject matter where you're an expert. Again, it could be how to play better pickleball. It could be how to analyze gold in your portfolio. Whatever it is, they want to analyze you for that. My question is, would you say yes to that? There's no right or wrong answer. You might say, TJ, that's not my thing. I don't want to be talking to the world. In which case, total respect for you. There's nothing wrong with that. But, and here's the big but, if you are someone who says, well, yes, I would do that. Sure, let me drop everything. Let me rearrange my meetings this morning. Yeah, to go on the Today Show. or to go on in prime time on CNN? Sure, I would do that. If you're saying yes to that, then we have a problem. You should be doing your own podcast. Because the only reason you would say yes to a major TV network inviting you on to talk about your area of expertise is you want to share your ideas with the world. Well, for many years, certainly for most of my career, the only way to do that was to wait, hope, plead, beg to get a major TV network to have you on. You don't have to do that anymore. You can start your own podcast. Now, you're not going to have millions to start. You're not going to have thousands. You could literally have zero until you launch it yourself. That's okay. But if your goal is to reach people throughout the world with your message, stop waiting for the TV network call. Stop waiting for the producer. Stop waiting to be discovered as you walk out of the fountain shop in downtown Hollywood. Just discover yourself. Put yourself on there. Because what Amy Poehler understands, and Sanjay Gupta, and Bill Maher, and all of these other stars who've started podcasts realize is the days of TV networks giving you big bags of money and say, here, do whatever you want, are gone. Or they're almost gone. The days are numbered. So that's what all of these stars are scrambling to get their own shows on the air, so to speak, through podcast. Now, they already won in the old system. They already won through the gatekeepers. The folks who are stars of Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm have their own podcast. They won. They already won. Susie Essman has already won. She's already getting royalties from TV shows. She doesn't have to do this, but she has her own podcast because she wants to stay continually relevant. If you want to be relevant today, even if you've never been relevant in the cultural landscape, you can do it. And I think the fact that the Golden Globes is giving awards to podcast is extraordinarily, extraordinarily significant. So, hey, it's January. There's still time for New Year's resolutions. I would highly recommend to you, if you've been thinking about a podcast, don't wait another day. Just come on in. The water's fine. Join me in the world of podcasting.
We'll be right back after this break. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Most people can't afford a full-time coach. And even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question. Get feedback on your elevator pitch. Rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it.
Renee Nicole Good is still in the news. This story is not going away, my friends. In case you forgot, she's the 37-year-old woman, housewife, mother of 3, widower, Christian, who was shot. Some would say, arguably, it was a murder by an ICE official last week. And the official party line, and I do mean party line, coming from the highest levels of our government is she deserved it. She was a radical extremist. No need for an investigation here. Don't believe your eyes of what you see in the video. Just take our word for it. This was a deranged, lunatic woman, ostensibly, who was trying to subvert America and kill ICE officials. That's essentially what we're hearing from the highest levels of our government. And the only problem is a lot of Americans are trusting their own eyes rather than what they're hearing from officials. And this is a problem for authoritarians everywhere when there is video out showing one thing and they're trying to say something else. Now, rightly or wrongly, people tend to trust their eyes more than what politicians tell them. You could argue, of course, in this day and age of AI video, maybe it's not wise to do that. But we've now seen so many consistent videos of this that do not appear in any way to be manipulated by AI that I don't think that the possibility of this being AI-generated video is really a relevant part of the story. Now, protests are growing. It's not just in Minnesota, but across Texas, New York, Washington, D.C., Seattle, Portland. More and more Americans are saying, oh, we do have an enemy of America. We do need to put America first. We do need better law enforcement. And the real enemy right now in America is ICE. It is, in fact, the Trump administration. Now, again, don't listen to me. Look at the polls. This is what the polls, in fact, are showing. And in particular, to the situation of Minneapolis, Minnesota, their crime rate is lower than it's been in recorded history. The ostensible reason for ICE to be coming in is somehow the society of Minneapolis, Minnesota is overrun with dangerous criminal elements from abroad. Horrible, illegal, monstrous, illegal aliens, to use their words. That's what we're told. And yet we see Renee Nicole Macklin Good, age 37, citizen of the United States, white woman. I wish that didn't matter, but it does for a lot of people. A Christian woman. Not that that should matter, but it does to a lot of people. We see her shot in cold blood. Now, I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist. Differing people can look at this footage in different ways and come up with different conclusions. Okay, I'm not going to tell you, you have to agree with me or you're 100% wrong, a disturbed individual. I'm not going to say that. But as I have tried to look at this video footage fairly objectively from a lot of different angles, it sure doesn't look like this woman, Renee Good, had some clear-cut intent to run over and murder ICE officials. She was talking politely. She said, "I'm not angry with you." One officer apparently did tell her to get out of the car. Another officer said, "Move along, get out of here." You're in this confusing situation. She backed up slowly, turned her wheels to the right, and then, again, reasonable people can differ on how close she was to hitting an agent. And reasonable people can guess on what the mindset was of the agent. Now, apparently he had something similar that perhaps brought back a traumatic effect. But the protocol for military or non-military police officials in America is you don't shoot first and ask questions later. You don't just say, okay, this person's trying to get away, shoot. Or they might have been close to me, but now they're past, let's shoot and shoot to kill. And it certainly doesn't say shoot 3 times. And yet that's exactly what has happened. So the National Guard has been activated. You've got disputes among various government bodies. What the United States federal government is saying is different from what state and local officials are saying there. Now, typically in any situation like this, you have elected officials who try to cool anger, to tone things down, to do what they can to try to stop ugliness. It certainly happened during Rodney King. It's happened in various administrations, whether you were George H.W. Bush, whether you were Bill Clinton, George Bush. Things like this can happen from time to time. Typically, the leader-in-chief tries to speak for the whole country, calm things down. That's not what's happening here. Trump does what Trump does. He uses any opportunity to rile up his base, to troll his enemies, to get people as angry as possible, to get as much attention as possible. So everything about this case is in violation of standard protocol and norms. The norm would be, let's have an official investigation. Let's not prejudge anything. Let's get to the bottom of this and be accountable to the American people, and in this case, the citizens of Minneapolis, Minnesota. That would be the normal thing to do, regardless of your party, regardless of whether you consider yourself a conservative, a liberal, a Republican, a Democrat, a libertarian. That would be the normal way of doing things. Of course, nothing in this administration is done in a normal manner. So we see just this reflexive, knee-jerk thing. Oh, this person didn't wear a MAGA hat. They didn't seem to be cheering on and appreciating ICE. Therefore, they're our enemy. Therefore, they must be deranged. Therefore, they must be a part of the lunatic left. Therefore, they deserve whatever happened to them. Therefore, they deserve to die. That is the quick chain of logic that is being put forth by President Trump, by Vice President J.D. Vance, and it is resonating with a number of the staunchest supporters of this administration. I see it in my own comments on my Facebook page, YouTube, and other places where I post my own commentary. So clearly some people are buying it, but not everyone, and it does not appear to be resonating with most Americans. It certainly does not appear to be resonating with moderate Americans, independent-minded Americans, with Americans who don't reflexively say anything Donald Trump says must be correct. If he says black is white or white is black, I will from now on refer to white as black. Anyone who doesn't have that mindset is left scratching their head saying, really, what's going on here? Because as I've talked about earlier this week and last week in the show, we're reaching a very dangerous part of our evolution of democracy. Because, and this is a theme that's hitting a lot of stories today, what seems to have happened is the president has endorsed this mentality of, if you disagree with me in any way, if you do not actively support me and my policies, my henchmen, whether it's the U.S. military, whether it's ICE, National Guard, whatever it is, my henchmen can do whatever they want to you. They can remove you from power in another country. They can shoot you, perhaps eliminate your life right here in the streets of America. And no one can do anything to me. If I just say it's right, if I just proclaim they are terrorists, enough people will follow it. And anyone who disagrees, well, they're now the enemy. They need to be investigated. They need to be punished. This seems to be the real lesson the Trump administration has learned, and it's extraordinarily troubling. You know, if the Democrats were smart, and often they aren't, if independents, moderates, if the Republicans who are anti-Trump were smart, they would put this woman's face on every billboard in America and just simply say, Renee Good, mother of 3, Christian, suburban housewife, murdered by ICE, you are next. If they were smart, that's what they would do, and make a lot of Americans realize, hey, this really could happen to me. Because let's face it, racism, classism is real in America. And if the government rounds up or roughs up or even accidentally kills a migrant here illegally from another country who perhaps has dark skin, there are a lot of Americans who say, well, sorry, but you know what? That doesn't really affect me. But when you see a white middle-class woman with lightish brown blonde hair, a self-professed Christian, driving with her spouse in a car chatting pleasantly with an official of the administration saying, I'm not angry with you, appearing to drive very slowly, following orders, getting shot and killed. That's when the stuff gets real, folks. And if you don't think it's real yet, I don't know what's going to get your attention.
Filtered is brought to you by the following. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to media interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Thanks for listening. If you like today's episode, you'll love my online courses at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Check them out now and level up your skills.
Okay, this is big news, although not, I guess, surprising news, but federal prosecutors have started a criminal investigation into Fed Chair Jerome Powell, escalating a long-running effort to pressure the Federal Reserve. Now, this is troubling at many, many levels. A little reminder here, folks. If Joe Biden had appointed some Jesse Jackson to be head of the Federal Reserve, or some extreme Marxist-Leninist economist from the University of Berkeley as chairman of the Federal Reserve, you could kind of sort of make the case that, okay, Trump's really itching for a change. He thinks this is such an extreme outlier. Maybe a hint here or there to leave might be in order. You could make that case. I don't think it would be convincing, but you could make that case. But let's never forget, Jerome Powell was picked by Donald Trump to be the head of the Federal Reserve. This was Trump's own appointment. And so let's be very, very clear what's going on. Donald Trump has repeatedly put pressure on the Federal Reserve and Chairman Jerome Powell to lower interest rates because Trump believes that's going to stimulate the economy, make everyone happy, show job growth. And it might, but it might not. It might make things much, much worse. So what happens when a country says, okay, we're no longer going to have an independent Fed? We don't really have to guess about that because there are clear-cut examples from history around the world. The United States, as long as it's had a Fed, has had a relatively independent Fed. It's true Nixon had tried to put some pressure on occasionally. It wasn't that successful. But this is a clear-cut case where, he did it with Lisa Cook, tried to fire her. That was ruled illegal. He's trying to get Powell out. And by the way, Powell's term expires in a few years. All this nastiness, this bile, this using the apparatus of the Department of Justice, going after enemies. Meanwhile, there's real crime in the world. But between all the lawyers at the Department of Justice looking to remove Epstein files that mention Trump's name and going after political enemies like Jerome Powell, I don't know how they have any time to actually fight real crime. So if you consider yourself a law and order conservative or someone who just doesn't like crime, that alone should concern you. But I seriously don't believe there's any honest person in the world who has more than an 89 IQ who believes Jerome Powell is guilty of some crime. Look, on a lot of issues, there can be wide disagreement. What should the top marginal tax rate be for high income Americans? Honest people can have legitimate disagreements on that. Should the United States do more to promote Solar energy. Honest people can debate that. I really do not think any honest person believes that Jerome Powell is guilty of some crime worthy of the United States Justice Department investigating him. That's what's happened. It's done solely as intimidation. It's done solely because Trump wants a particular policy. So again, let's look at the facts. Turkey, in 2019, the central bank governor was fired. A henchman of the dictator there was installed. Currency drops. Fast forward to 2022. Inflation goes to 85.5%. Okay, that's the big fear if you just reduce interest rates when various economic factors do not suggest that's the wise thing to do. Now, I'm not an economist. Chances are you're not an economist. We certainly know that Donald Trump is not an economist. What he's good at is running companies into the ground and bankrupting companies and getting his daddy to bail him out throughout most of his life. So if you want advice on how to bankrupt the United States, by all means, listen to this administration. But when it comes to how the Federal Reserve is run and managed, maybe we should not completely throw away everything that's worked relatively well for the last 100 years in America. So that was Turkey. Argentina did the same thing. Said, oh, we don't forget this whole independent Fed. Let's just put our henchmen in, tell us what we want, give us what we want. Their inflation hit 300% in 2024. So if you like 300% inflation, by all means endorse this fake, phony witch hunt into Jerome Powell. And let me say up front, I'm not some big Jerome Powell fan. He wouldn't have been my first choice to be head of the Federal Reserve. He was Donald Trump's first choice to be head of the Federal Reserve. So stick with something. Again, it's a similar theme we see throughout every area of policy, domestic and foreign, in America today. You can be Trump's guy or woman in the case of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Support everything he says for years and years and years. Every policy, lather him with praise. You disagree on one issue, you're now an enemy of the state. You are now some radical leftist extremist. He hasn't quite said that Jerome Powell has been taken over or brainwashed by radical leftists from Cuba. But, you know, the day's young. I better be quiet. I might be giving him ideas. You know who else tries to do cute things like this? Venezuela. And that's a country where a fourth of the country thought it was so awful, they fled the country. So, yeah, you may be supporting and saying, that's great that Trump took out Maduro, and we'll leave that aside for another day. He's essentially following Maduro's policies of, you got to control every part of the economy. Don't let the private sector, don't let an independent Fed make decisions. Do whatever you want for short-term pleasure. Now, Donald Trump is only a few months away from turning 80. Now, I could certainly understand at age 80 having more of a short-term timeline, a short-term frame of reference. Because just from and I'm not wishing anyone ill, but just from an actuarial standpoint, he's had more in the past than he will in the future. So if he's thinking, well, short-term in the next 18 months, our economy might really grow if all of a sudden interest rates were dropped 1%, 2%, or went all the way to zero. He's probably right. But then if you have 10 years of 300% inflation, is that worth it? I don't think so. So Jerome Powell, realize nobody thinks you're guilty. Any attorney in the Department of Justice prosecuting you, I guarantee you, inject them with sodium pentothal, ask them the question, is this guy guilty of a crime? They would say, of course not. It's laughable. He's just on the enemies list. And I do as I'm told because I don't want to become unemployed. And if I continue doing what I'm told, I might become a federal judge. I might even get to be on the Supreme Court. And regardless, I'll be set for the rest of my life with cushy jobs, endorsements. I'll be famous. So that's what's really happening with this so-called investigation into Jerome Powell.
Want a shortcut to powerful communication skills? Download the TJ Walker Success Library, 5 of my best-selling books for only $9.95. Go to tjwalker.com/books. Instant access, big impact. I've had entire YouTube channels wiped out overnight, so if you enjoy this show, don't lose track of me. The safest way is my newsletter, substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Sign up for free and you'll get exclusive commentary, live session alerts, and first access to new tools. Again, that's substack.com. Just search for TJ Walker or go to substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Your direct line to everything I do.
Okay, more and more is coming out about Donald Trump and his true feelings. He had, as I mentioned earlier, a 4-hour interview with the New York Times last week. They are, in a clever way, continuing to put spotlights on different sections. He's done other interviews, too, where he is not holding back. He's saying the quiet parts out loud. Now, according to President Trump, his biggest regret from his entire first term, not ordering the National Guard to seize voting machines after the 2020 election. Also, he's claimed that civil rights protections led to white people being treated very badly. Now, I'll be giving you some firsthand accounts of how white people are treated in America based on my own experiences. So hang on, get ready for that. So let's think about what the logical implications of this are. If he had, in fact, seized the voting machines, he could simply order the military to, hey, you do the count. And by the way, don't stop counting until I have more votes. And if you have a decision, if you have a count, if your calculator gives you a different conclusion, just see yourself out on the way to your court martial. Then what would have happened? There would have been no Biden administration, and you might not have been a fan of the Biden administration. But maybe, I'm hoping, you're a fan of the concept of democracy. So again, he's being blatant right here, saying he wishes he had not stolen, or that he wishes he had, in fact, stolen the 2020 election. He's quite happy with the fact that he just claimed the election was stolen. He claimed fraud, which, by the way, if you go back and look at his interviews in 2016, he was asked, what are you going to do if you don't win against Hillary? And again, I guess you could say to his credit for being honest, he said, I'll just claim it was fraud. So this has always been a part of his mindset. And interesting to me, because Donald Trump's famous favorite movie of all time is Citizen Kane, which is also one of my favorite movies. What happens to the William Hearst character, Charles Foster Kane, when he loses the election for mayor of New York City? He runs headlines saying it was fraud. You have to think that was a part of what gave Donald Trump this idea. So, again, this is, again, not surprising on the one hand. It's a revelation in another. I hadn't quite thought about how he would do it. I was always just assuming he would just refuse to leave the White House and simply say there was a national emergency. But apparently he had thought in great detail of how he would do this. So asking the National Guard to seize the voting machines in the swing states, turns out that would have worked if you had simply seized all the voting machines in the swing states, claiming fraud. Again, one thing Donald Trump has learned in his lab, people say he doesn't learn. No, he learns. He's learned very clearly. If you just claim something is fraudulent, about 40%, 35 to 40% of the country will agree with you and parrot that back to you and their family and friends. So he could have easily just claimed there was evidence of fraud in all the swing states and in their voting machines. And then he could have had his people counting. Now, imagine for a moment that someone with the character, shall we say, of Pam Bondi, someone with the ethical rectitude of Pam Bondi or Stephen Miller were in charge of counting the votes from the seized voting machines in 2020. What do you think the result of that election will be? Surprise, surprise. Donald Trump wins in a landslide. He won all 7 swing states. I think we can pretty confidently say that's how it would have happened because they follow their orders. Their allegiance is not to the Constitution or fidelity of truth. Their allegiance is to one man, giving that one man power, keeping him in power. So it is amazingly how close we came to losing democracy in 2020. And for whatever reason, he claims he felt like the National Guard wasn't quite competent enough to do it. So he's got that issue. And then meanwhile, he's claiming that white people have been treated very badly. Now, this is essentially the underlying philosophy of all this mass push to get rid of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. It's bad, bad, bad. We've heard that every single day for the last year. And again, the underlying premise is that white people have really had a tough go in America. Let me share with you what it's like to be a white man in America. If I could just be personal here for a moment. Is everything perfect? No. Is it like the old Eddie Murphy skit on Saturday Night Live where he dresses up as a white man, goes into a bank, and they just give him unlimited amounts of cash without collateral? No, it's not quite that simple. But I can tell you firsthand, if you're a white man in America, you get the benefit of the doubt a lot. I remember once I was in Central Park and I slapped a police officer. Now, I wasn't intending to. It was a pure accident. But I slapped a police officer. And you know what happened to me? The officer apologized to me for getting in the way of my hand. Now, if you're an immigrant, a poor black man, someone with dark skin, I wouldn't advise slapping a police officer accidentally or any other way. You're going to be on the ground, hog-tied, perhaps beaten, maybe worse if that happens. You know, if you are a cocaine user and abuser in America and you're a black man and you get caught, get ready for a nice 10, 20, 30 years in prison. If you're and I'm not a cocaine user, but if you're a cocaine user in America and you're white, well, you could be George W. Bush, end up president and rich. So again, am I saying nothing bad ever happens to a white man? No. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, there are many, many cases where you just get the benefit of the doubt. I remember back, the very first job real job I was ever hired for out of college, I was 23 years old. And I was hired to be a director of communications for a pretty significant agency in a state government. I had a staff of about a dozen, a big office, secretaries, and they were called secretaries back then, a couple of them, other researchers, all at my disposal. And I found out one day that I was looking to hire an assistant, one had left, based on the qualifications just to be my assistant. I wasn't qualified. I was 23 years old. I had a philosophy degree, and I'd worked in the real world about 6 months. To be my own assistant, I had to have a master's degree in communication and or 5 years of professional experience to be my own assistant. I didn't have that. But what do you know? The guy who had the job before me was a white man. I got it. The guy who got the job after me was a white man. It wasn't the person I hired. And I think I was kind of given the benefit of the doubt. The guy who hired me, he liked the fact that he and I were wearing the same tie. He liked the school I went to. And everyone there was wonderful, lovely, great experience for me. But my point in telling you this is, if you think that somehow white people in general are the most oppressed people in society, well, I just don't think the facts bear it out. The facts in my own life don't bear that out. Other people can certainly have other sets of circumstances. More in a moment.
We'll be right back after this break. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Most people can't afford a full-time coach, and even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it.
Congressman Thomas Massie is in the spotlight. Major profile of him in today's New York Times. He is often seen in the crosshairs between, I hope not literally, we have to be careful about some of that rhetoric, but who knows? He is often seen as an adversary. Let me just make things sound polite to President Trump. He's a Republican. He's a conservative Republican. So this is not Senator Elizabeth Warren attacking the president. This is not Bernie Sanders attacking the president. This is consistently a conservative, self-identified conservative, libertarian Republican, Thomas Massie, who has been in the Congress for a while, and he's not having it with President Trump. Now, he has achieved such notoriety in the administration. They're targeting him. They're funding his opponents. There's going to be a very heavily funded adversary opponent of Massie's in the Republican primary for that district this year. We'll see how he does. Here's how he sums it up. I want to put a spotlight and read to you this extensive quote, because whether you agree with him or not, I do think he is a very clear speaker. He has crystallized his reason for being. And if you're a politician, for that matter, a CEO, it's a real skill, an important skill, to summarize exactly what people need to know about you, to put yourself in the most favorable light, to give people a reason to be excited about you. This is an important skill for any candidate, any incumbent, any startup founder. So let's analyze it together. Here's what he says regarding this new opponent he has who's going to have millions of dollars given to him by the Trump administration. He says, quote, "My race will be a referendum on whether you can be in the Republican Party in Washington, D.C., and have a thought that diverges from the president's." We have three branches of government, and if the legislative branch becomes a rubber stamp for the president, then we do have a king. Well said, Congressman Massie. Now, you may be someone who actually likes most of Trump's policies. Okay, fine. We can debate that another day, the wisdom there. But you can't be someone who likes most of Trump's policies and tell yourself you love the Constitution and tell yourself you're a conservative and like what's going on in Washington these days. Because Congressman Massie is exactly right. If you do not have Republicans, the significance of the Republicans right now is they actually control the House and the Senate. So that's why he's putting such importance on this. If you can't be a Republican in Washington when they control the House and the Senate and disagree with the president, if you're so intimidated through fear of intimidation, of perhaps physical harm to yourself and your family, if you feel like you have no option for standing up against the president, then there is no practical difference between the president of the United States and a king. Kings can do whatever they want. Remember Mel Brooks in The History of the World Part 1? It's good to be the king. And he's like shooting peasants just for fun. That's essentially what we have. And also doing, I won't even do the gesture, but inappropriate things to comely women walking by. That's what Mel Brooks got to do as the king, saying it's good to be the king. Now, I've never seen Donald Trump mention that as one of his favorite movies alongside Citizen Kane, but certainly seems to be an inspiration. So Massey is putting his finger on it. You have to be able to disagree with someone in your own party if you're a member of Congress and they are the president. Otherwise, you don't have a functioning democracy. This was not a hard lesson in 1974. The Republicans in Congress agreed with the Democrats that Richard Nixon had to go. Richard Nixon couldn't just say, oh, it's all fake news, and order every Republican to support him and to march with him for fear of him calling them out and having them attacked and running. He didn't have that ability to do that. So when a president is caught doing illegality, criminality, they could essentially be forced out of office, as happened with Nixon. Because the only reason he resigned is he was told, hey, the jig is up and you're going to be impeached and removed. And that's why he resigned. That was the only reason. It would not have happened if every single Republican had said, nope, no matter what, Nixon can be caught on film. He can do it on live national TV, breaking into the Democratic National Party and stealing things. He can commit any atrocity. We're going to support him no matter what. I mean, if that had happened, Nixon might still be president or have been president another 30 years. If he could do absolutely anything, then why leave office? So as I mentioned earlier, Saturday and Sunday on this program, I think we are reaching a very dangerous point in the history of this country, because I disagree with those on the left and those on more progressive side who says Trump is dumb and he never learns anything and his whole mindset is about the 1980s being in tabloids in New York City. I don't think that's accurate. I think he is learning. I think he's learning every day. And I think Donald Trump is really learning the lesson, especially in the last few weeks, that he can get away with anything. The days of him worrying about public approval ratings and votes are gone. He can simply do whatever he wants. And if that means proclaiming that the Democratic Party has been infiltrated by a radical terrorist organization and therefore the Democratic Party needs to be disbanded, I think he's going to look into that and give it serious consideration. If he wants to say that the 22nd Amendment doesn't apply to him and he can run for office again, I certainly think, and anyone who disagrees with him will be ruined or destroyed. I certainly think that's on the table. I certainly think it's on the table, the idea of him running Donald Trump Jr. as president, and then if it looks like he didn't win fairly, doing what he almost did in 2020, which is just having the United States military seize the voting machines in all the swing states and keep voting or keep counting until they give Trump the number he wants. So I think he's learning new lessons every single day.
Imagine having a communication coach who never sleeps. Meet your new secret weapon, the the TJ Walker AI clone. Go to tjwalker.ai and start getting custom coaching 24/7. No scheduling, no hourly fees. I train presidents, prime ministers, and Fortune 500 CEOs. But the same exact communication I've delivered to world leaders is now available to you online, anytime at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Whether you're speaking on camera, pitching a client, or handling a crisis, you need these tools. These aren't fluffy motivational videos. They're practical, battle-tested techniques to help you speak clearly, confidently, and persuasively. Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com and take your communication to the next level.
Time for a question of the day. I end the show each day with a question from you, typically one of my students. I do have 12 million student enrollments in my online personal development and communication skills courses. So these questions typically come from them. This question comes from Jeff, who is a student in my complete organizing home office life course. So it's a decluttering course. And the question is, what wins did you get, and how do these actions contribute to creating a cleaner, more organized personal space? What small wins do you get by following specific practices? So I can tell you one of my goals that I talk about in this course is throw one thing away each day. It could be as simple as one piece of paper that you've had on your desk too long, which I'm going to throw that away right now. So do one thing a day to declutter. I try to keep my desk as clean as possible. If you could see it, you wouldn't see much on here. I do have tissue. I do have a notepad, but that's about it, because I find I think better with all this stuff not around me. Now, there is apparently some small percentage of people who are at their optimum level of creativity surrounded in chaos. I'll grant you that, but all the research I've read shows that the vast majority of people can think more clearly, more creatively, if there's nothing else cluttering up their workspace. So I'm a huge fan of decluttering, keeping things minimal. I'm not, frankly, a big fan of cleaning. Some members of my household will attest to that. I like to go to the root of the problem quite often. It's just too much stuff. And put things away is one way. But the easiest way of all is to not buy stuff constantly. We live in a culture where people associate prosperity, success with having more stuff. Now, I was walking through the mall in Palm Beach Gardens just yesterday with my family and my wife, and I asked my daughter, I said, do you know what the difference is between being rich and being poor is? She said, no, but I want to be rich. Okay. I said, here's being rich. I'm walking through this mall, and there's nothing here I really want. There's nothing here that I think is going to make me happier than I am today. So in my mind, that makes me rich. If you're walking through the mall and you're telling yourself, if only I had that, I'd be happy. If only I had this, I'd be happier. Then you're always going to be poor. Now, I don't mean to sound cavalier. Obviously, if you don't have enough food or shelter, you're poor, and there's not much you can do about that until you get more food or shelter. So I don't mean to sound flippant about that, but I do think that we often create our own prisons with more and more stuff, more and more clutter. And while my course on how to organize your house does give you tips on organizing things and, sometimes putting things in different colored bins, the number one way of being organized is to just not buy stuff. The second best way of being organized, decluttered, is to either throw stuff away, give it away, or sell it and reduce the amount of stuff in your life. I'm TJ Walker. This is Filtered. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. It's great spending time with you. If this is your first time here, thank you. And please come back tomorrow. I'm typically here 7 days a week because the news happens every day. I'm trying to give you an honest, sincere, accurate, and truthful analysis of the news, filtered through the lens of communication skills, personal development skills, and truth. That's what we're about. If you got any value today, please like the show, subscribe to it, follow it, sign up for notifications, and tell your friends. Thanks so much. I will see you tomorrow.